Hi everybody, it's March 9th, 2026, and I've been posting these live videos trying to recover from the trauma, watching my little brother with Down syndrome be locked away and die. But all day today, I don't know why I let myself get caught up in these things, but I've been posting funny retorts to these Alberta Separatists. So my background, here's what I would say about these idiots. I was born, my dad worked underground in Sudbury, and I'm the eighth of 9 kids, and his little mine, fruit mine in Sudbury, produced 40% of all of the nickel used by the Allies, all of the Allies, the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Russia, in World War II. And they worked so fast that about 2 men a week would die underground. My dad was a safety engineer, so he had to run towards the cave-ins when everybody else ran away. My dad was very brilliant and very brave. And when I was born, my mother had RH factor, and the only treatment for that was to induce labor early and then to do blood transfusion. So I was born dead in Toronto. We lived in Sudbury, but my mother had to have all her pregnancies in Toronto. And so I was born dead, black and floppy with RH factor, rhesus factor. And my dad begged the doctor. My sister before me, Mary Patricia, was stillborn, full term. And my dad begged the doctors to try and revive me. And I got 6 transfusions from strangers in Toronto. And maybe that's what gives me my attitude towards Canada. Then when I was 13, we moved to Montreal. And my dad is a Montrealer. His father moved from Vermont to Montreal and worked his way up from sweeping the train tracks in Montreal to being the chairman of the Montreal Transit Commission. He had a key to the freedom of the city, and my dad said that meant my grandpa could park in the middle of I forget the name of the bridge, Jacques Cartier. My grandpa could park in the middle of the Jacques Cartier bridge and nobody could say anything. My grandpa could speak perfect Irish, French, and English without an accent. So we moved to Montreal, and it was at the worst possible time. We moved in 1969. My dad was a co-designer of the Churchill Falls Hydroelectric Project in Labrador. And so I was 14 in 1970 during the October crisis, and that's when the FLQ, the Federation of Liberation to Quebec, went on a rampage. And it was like every 10 days there would be a bomb going off in a post box. They put them in post box because they had the insignia of the king on the post box. And it was just like sort of scary normal to have bombs going off all around you. And people were blown up to pieces. Perfectly innocent office workers were blown up. And then in October of 1970, they kidnapped the deputy premier of Quebec, Pierre Laporte, who was a father and a husband, very nice guy. My dad knew him. They kidnapped him, the FLQ kidnapped him and murdered him and left his body in the trunk of a car. They also kidnapped James Cross, the British consul, And it was just terrifying, a terrifying time. Pierre Trudeau said that he would send in the Canadian Army, which he did. They asked him, he famously said outside of Parliament, they said, "Are you going to send in the Canadian Army?" And he said, "Just watch me." He was a real man, unlike his horrible son. No, his son wasn't his son anyways. But so we had tanks, Sherman tanks, hundreds and hundreds, rolling down Sherbrooke Street in Montreal, past our house. Oh yeah, and the glass, there was a bomb on our street that blew all the windows out on all the townhouses on our block, Elm Avenue. And a little girl was injured across the street. So they sent in tanks, and there was 2 soldiers on our block. We had a cabinet minister, I can't remember his name, lived 2 doors down. And so he had a fully armed in battle gear, battle dress, Canadian soldiers at the front door and at the back door. And it was just a total terrifying state of siege. And then eventually they caught the FLQ terrorists, and they all went to prison. Not for long enough, as far as I'm concerned. But it was very traumatizing. And Montreal was booming at that time. But all the head offices of all the companies moved away. All the educated people, every single person, most people I know from Montreal were bilingual, but everybody that had any education at all moved away. It was a huge brain drain. But at that time, after the FLQ crisis was resolved, I worked picking cherries at a farm in Creston, British Columbia. When I was 15, I spent that summer picking cherries. And after that, I started hitchhiking across North America. I hitchhiked when I was 15. I hitchhiked from Montreal to Miami. But then I hitchhiked from Montreal to Vancouver the summer I was 16. So you really get to know a country. When you sleep, I hitchhiked through Alberta. I remember getting stuck in Wawa, Ontario. Everybody got stuck in Wawa, Ontario. I got stuck in Brandon, Manitoba. But you really see a country from the ground, from the side of the road. I can remember the thing I remember most about hitchhiking across Canada when I was 16 was how black my feet were. I was wearing sandals, and I got stuck in Sparwood, British Columbia, which is a coal mining center, and my feet were just covered in black coal dust. And then eventually I settled in British Columbia, and I had a family, got my law degree, and became a federal prosecutor. When I was campaigning for the Conservative candidate in this last election in April of 2025, I said to the candidate, I would die for Canada. Canada has treated me like shit. My brother was locked up and died. I've lost everything. I've been declared a vexatious litigant, but I would die for Canada. And if I was in the armed forces, I would kill for Canada. So I've spent the day responding to these Alberta Separatists, and it's so funny. They're so lightweight compared to the Fédération de Libération de Québec. I mean, at least those guys had cojones. These Alberta Separatists, they put posts on Facebook where they spell sovereignty wrong, and they spell Smoky Lake wrong. If you can't spell, maybe you cannot have your own province. But what I said to them is, if you think that you can beat the Canadian Army, ask Kaiser Wilhelm from the First World War or Hitler from the Second World War, if you think you've got the cojones to beat the Canadian Army. Because say what you want, it's the best army in the world and always has been, always will be. But at the same time, you can destroy Canada and drag down our economy and drag down Alberta's economy, is what I saw happen in Quebec. Quebec was destroyed by the separatist movement, and it's never recovered. So I just, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. You're such a bunch of stinking idiots. There's so much that needs to be fixed in Canada. We have euthanasia. We've killed 100,000 innocent, vulnerable people extrajudicially since October 19th, 2015, when Justin Trudeau was elected, with no judicial oversight whatsoever. And all of these other crazy land title claims and everything else, they're all issues and problems to be dealt with. But in my opinion, the most important one is euthanasia. That is going to destroy the reason that Canada could stay together even after the American Civil War or during the American Civil War is because Canada always took the high ground. We had the moral high ground because we abolished slavery 72 years before the 13th Amendment of the United States. But we've slipped into this Machiavellian evil, Hitler, dark hole of killing our most vulnerable people. 100,000 people killed by a doctor administering a lethal injection, a doctor or a nurse. No, there's no judicial oversight at all. And I guarantee you, the last people on earth that should ever decide who has the right to live or die are medical doctors. Anyways, so that's what I was dealing with today. I love you all. Take care.